I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpm.fm to discover more.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Town Hall Spark Sessions. I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. We are creativity coaches at the Spark File, where we help people fear less and create more.
As creatives ourselves, we are obsessed with one of the most dynamic cultural centers in New York City, the Town Hall.
For over a century, the Town Hall has been a champion for artistry and advocacy, amplifying the voices of icons and emerging artists alike.
And now the Spark File and the Town Hall have joined forces to elevate and celebrate artists who are gracing the stage at the Town Hall and using their creativity to fight for the powers of good.
So without further ado, let's get into the Town Hall Spark Sessions.
Susan Blackwell, I have the most sparkish spark for you today. I'm really excited about this. It isn't often that we have fellow podcasters on our podcast. Not that we don't want to do it, but it just hasn't happened that often.
Yes.
But this week, something really fun is happening at Town Hall, which led to my spark. So there's a podcast called Blank Check with Griffin and David, where they take a film director and they dedicate a whole series to discussing the complete filmography of that director, episode to episode.
Oh my God.
They dissect it, Suze. It's so fascinating and fun. They specifically focus on filmmakers who had like an early success that afforded them that rare blank check from Hollywood, right?
Yes.
So suddenly like, oh, you can have all the money you need to produce whatever you want, your passion project, etc. So that's the concept. And I got to talk to one of their hosts, Griffin Newman. He's a New York City comedian and actor who, along with his co-host, David Sims, who, fun fact, is also the film critic for The Atlantic. These guys know their stuff. Together, they created Blank Check 10 years ago. They have been podcasting for 10 years. And I discovered that Griffin starred in The Tick with my friend Scott Spicer. So talking about our mutual love for Scott was an added bonus. I don't think we recorded that, so y'all might not get to hear that, but just know that it happened. And it was joyful. And Suze, I'm so excited for you to hear what Griffin had to say about his creative pursuits and their upcoming show at Town Hall. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Welcome, Griffin. I'm going to call you Griff from here on out.
Totally cool. Yeah.
Can you tell us, how do you personally identify creatively speaking?
That's a good question. I think for many years I had a real struggle with identifying as an artist in any way, and I even like recoil at saying the word artist.
Yeah.
But when people would ask me what I would do, I would say I act and I do comedy and I write. I never wanted to say I'm an actor, I'm a comedian, I'm a writer.
Interesting.
Yeah. At this point, the podcasting thing has become such a real career for me.
Yeah.
That when I'm like at a doctor's office or anything where there's like kind of checklist, small talk,
real,
fill
what
in
do
the
you do?
form for occupation, I say professional podcaster, which I've seen in the last couple of years shift from being a like, no, but what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
To people now overselling it and going, oh, podcasting. I hear people are making hundreds of dollars doing that. And I'm like, 3 people are. But yeah, I do feel like that is kind of the dominant thing my work life is built around now. But I have at different points in time been an actor, been a comedian, been a writer, been a filmmaker, various other tangentially related things. I try to just, when things come across, I'll swing back to those identities.
Tell us about what you're doing at Town Hall.
Yeah, so the podcast I do with David Sims, who's the film critic at The Atlantic, Blank Check with Griffin and David. We've been doing the show for 10 years now. It was 10 years in March. And we did our first show at Town Hall last March for our 9th anniversary. We thought it was really funny. We thought it was really funny to make a big to-do out of the 9th anniversary rather than the 10th, to treat 9 as if that was the most important anniversary you could possibly commemorate and blow it out with the biggest show we could conceive of, which was a tribute to the number 9 and the history of the number 9 in movies. Which also does not end up being that great of a history once we really dug in. There are not a lot of really important 9 movies, less so than maybe other numbers.
Less than you might think.
Yeah. So that was a little bit more of a big variety show with all sorts of special guests and dance numbers and musical performances. This year, we're trying something that's maybe closer to being a more theatrical version of our usual episode format. Our producer, Ben Hosley, who's been with us from the beginning, we started doing this thing in our first year, I want to say, where in between miniseries on directors, which is the main crux of our podcast, picking a filmmaker and going through their whole career, one movie, one episode at a time, we would sometimes in between series want to throw out a palate cleanser, something to sort of bridge the gap between 2 series that will be month-long commitments. So we started throwing to Ben the idea of what's a Ben's choice? What's a movie that's important to Ben that would maybe never come up in a director series? Maybe the director isn't big enough or prestigious enough to be covered in full, but movies that are really core to Ben's history and identity. And it was always fun to sort of have Ben pick a movie, almost always an unexpected, out of left field pick, and then try to psychoanalyze why did this movie mean something to you at a young age. And for years, the promise has always been that the next one would probably be King Ralph, the 1991 John Goodman accidentally becomes King of England movie. It was sort of this running gag that King Ralph was always the presumed next Ben's choice, but by the time we actually got to it, some new idea would come up that would supersede King Ralph. And so when we were trying to think of what's the biggest thing we could do for Town Hall to commemorate the 10th anniversary, we were like, we have been promising this episode for 10 years. So now we're finally tackling it.
It's a long time coming. And here we are at Town Hall. We're going to do it.
And I think similarly, we, when the folks at Town Hall and Paul Cameron Hardy in particular reached out to us about doing a show, we thought it was so absurd for us to be performing at such a historic and prestigious venue that I think we're always trying to find the comedy of the contrast between how stupid what we do feels and how beautiful and sort of like glamorous this venue is. Yeah. So here's this 1991 comedy that's like a cable mainstay that's largely forgotten by people, but is also about royal pomp and circumstance. And we're just going to try to put the ultimate sense of importance on this forgotten movie, but also try to dress it up in the same kind of pomp and circumstance as the film itself. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to or can share about like what audiences could expect if they show up on that night?
Piano rock plays a huge role in King Ralph, and that definitely will be incorporated into our show in a major way.
Okay.
We're trying to be aware of the fact that this is a venue that's not meant for podcasts. It's meant for music. It's meant for more physical comedy. It's meant for all different types of things. So we're trying to lean into some of those other areas.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think it's an opportunity to talk about John Goodman at large. You know, a lot of what we love on the podcast is talking about people's careers and sort of in a kind of spark file way, trying to make sense of the trajectory of people's entire lives and the choices they make and how they define themselves and how they respond to failures and successes and all those things. So David S. Ward, who wrote and directed King Ralph, you know, had quite a big career on his own, even if he's not a household name. But I think this is as much an excuse to talk about John Goodman on that scale.
Yeah. And the impact it had on Ben and who Ben has become.
Well, right. Yeah. There will certainly be a lot of that, a lot of psychoanalyzing.
All right. Listen, what else besides this upcoming event at Town Hall? What is sparking your creativity right now?
That's a great question. Matt Johnson, who is like, to me, one of the most exciting filmmakers working today and did the movie Blackberry that came out a couple years ago. Also did a movie called The Dirties and Operation Avalanche out of Canada. And he has a really unique filmmaking style that is not quite improvisational, but is very iterative and sort of organic in how it develops. Then he'll circle back and rewrite things and reshoot things based on discoveries. And he had a series he did a number of years ago called Nirvana, the band, the show, that was about a struggling rock band trying to make big. And he brought it back as a movie now, which we got to see at South by Southwest a couple months back when we were there for the podcast. And I think it is one of the most exciting movies I've seen in years, not just be final product, but is really in that kind of spark way. You watch it and I talked to so many people who felt this way. You watch it and you go like, what's my excuse for not making stuff? They just went out and did something that on paper seems insane. And yet you watch the movie and it's a staggering accomplishment for how silly it is.
Yeah.
I mean, he talks a lot about trying to put a tremendous amount of work and thought and craft into something that feels like it took no thought and craft whatsoever. And that's the magic trick of it. But you watch this and you're just like, we all got to get more ambitious and we all got to just start doing something and see where it goes.
Hell yes. Now you're really speaking our language.
I think coming out later this year, but I highly recommend it.
And it's called
Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie.
Okay. Yeah. I will not forget that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to say that I love about what you do when you look at the whole filmography of someone's, you know, their life's work. Because besides the Spark File, Susan and I run these coaching programs, creativity coaching programs. And we work with a lot of people who, like, for what reason did they stop 20 years ago? Like something happened, right? They had maybe a perceived failure of some kind that they just thought, oh God, I can't put myself through that ever again. And what you do when you look at like, look, this person created something extraordinary. This next thing flopped. This next thing was like, this next thing hit big. This next thing was, And you show like, A, it's all survivable. B, the whole point is to keep going. I mean, just keep making things, because if Spielberg had stopped, right, like at Duel, or if he had stopped even mid Jaws when he thought he was going to get fired, if he had been like, ugh, the pressure is too great, I'm screwing this up, just forget it, I can't do this. Look what not only he, but all the rest of us would have missed out on because he didn't just keep going. And I just love that you show the whole scope of it. It's going to be ups and downs. If you want to be making stuff, it's going to be, you know, some big hits, some big misses, everything in between.
It is the thing that interests us. And when David and I became friends, we would just have these conversations all the time. And it's what eventually led to the podcast. It took us a while to figure it out. Oh, this is the thing we should frame these conversations around, because this is the thing we're innately drawn to. But putting those things into context and trying to make sense of the peaks and valleys that sometimes I think these people couldn't even verbalize while they're in them, you know?
Yep.
But, I think the podcast has this auteurist bent to it, but we're also very cognizant of the fact that it's like film is one of the most collaborative creative mediums. It takes so many people. I think we try to pick people where there's some sense of a specific viewpoint, a personality, a style that is basically you can't beat out of these people.
Yeah.
That to some degree, any movie they make is either going to hit or is going to be them trying to fight against it. But it's not to say that they're the only person who's interesting in the soup of how these movies turn out the way they do. But it does mean that every movie can make some sense at a square one as a response to what that just happened to them, right? Whether in their personal life or in their career. And Spielberg is such a fascinating example. We just did this whole series on the first half of his career because his is so long, we split it in half. But his first movie, Duel, is a TV movie. He levels up from that to Sugarland Express, which was theatrical and doesn't make a ton of money, but is very well reviewed. They give him Jaws. Jaws is this notoriously disastrous production, goes so over budget, so over schedule. Everyone thinks it's going to be a mess, and he pulls off this miracle out of it. And it redefines like the idea of blockbusters. It changes the whole industry. And then he sort of has his blank check moment to make what's his most personal movie. And at that point in time in his life, it's Close Encounters. And Close Encounters also similarly goes crazy over budget, way over schedule, no control. People think that's the moment that he's going to fall, his hubris come to earth moment. And instead, it's also a huge success and is critically beloved and gets Oscar nomination. So he's kind of invincible at that point. And he uses all that cachet to make 1941, which is even more expensive and even more over schedule. And then that one's a disaster. It's like the buck stops here, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly, even though he's coming off of two ginormous successes, the public response was, well, but even those successes, the guy can't be controlled. He takes too long. He costs too much. He's not responsible. And the second the movie doesn't work, there's this feeling of, do we have to rein this guy in? And what he does, which I think is so interesting and is a moment that I truly think defines the rest of his career, is he goes to George Lucas and George Lucas pitches Raiders of the Lost Ark to him. And George Lucas is going to produce that himself. It's his own idea. He's putting up the money. He's going to set up the distribution, but it's kind of being set up like an independent movie because of George Lucas and his autonomy at that moment. But what he recognizes in that is, I need to challenge myself to try to get as controlled as I possibly can.
Yes.
He said, even if I could make another Jaws type disastrous production and pull off a miracle, but then that will be my reputation for the rest of my life.
That's right.
And I need to say, limit my budget, limit my days, whittle it down, samurai style. How do I get as clean and Spartan? And there is a clarity to that movie and a simplicity and a focus to that movie that is him knowing he needs to force himself to evolve as an artist. And it's a turning point for the rest of his career. And obviously from there, he goes into different genres and different budget scales and all different types of things. But it did change the way he worked forever, which is, I need to create boundaries for myself, regardless of the success I've had.
Yeah. And to build his own confidence that all these things they're saying about me, I can prove to myself that it doesn't need to be true about me. I can do this differently. Yeah. That's extraordinary. And I really love watching films then with a new bit of context, like with a new understanding. Because a lot of times we don't know. We're watching films. We have no idea really what the filmmaker was going through, what this moment in time. Sometimes we're not even thinking about what year was this made and what was happening in the world when this was being filmed. And it's just like getting to watch it all through a new lens.
I think our main effort is to just try to build a good lens around all these movies. That whether people rewatch the movies or watch the movies for the first time along with our podcast, or if they just want to listen, it's fun to talk about the movies themselves, but it's also from the vantage point of the day on which we are recording the episode, what is the best lens we can build around this to examine everything that's in there and around, hovering around the universe of the movie.
I have one more question for you. You obviously, you work really hard You're committed to your creativity. What's it all for?
It's a big question. For me, for better or worse, I think I was a child in particular who struggled to make sense of the world around me, and especially kind of struggled to get a kind of grasp on like the human condition, the experience, and how to verbalize feelings and things like that. And there was a lot of communication that only made sense to me when I would see it reflected in creative works, you know?
Yeah.
When I would hear a song or read a book or watch a movie or whatever it was, stand-up comedian, someone who was able to encapsulate something where I felt like, oh, I get that, and I never heard someone say that, or I haven't heard them say it that way before. And it's unlocked something in me or my understanding of the world and helped me process in that way. And I always want to be entertained first and foremost, but when entertainment can also provide that for me, it was so, it was really instrumental in my development as a human being that I think with anything I create, I am hoping there is the off chance that I might stumble upon something that has that same sort of effect for someone else.
I love that. And I think you're doing it. I think goal achieved.
Thank you.
And it's great to see you guys doing it for 10 years and beyond. Maybe you'll celebrate the 19th anniversary.
That's the next big one.
Thank you for being here. I personally can't wait for Friday, June 6th at Town Hall. I think it's going to be an incredible night. And I hope a whole bunch of listeners will join me there.
I hope so as well. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much to our guest, Griffin Newman, for joining us for the Town Hall Spark Sessions. And thanks to the team at the Town Hall who make all of this possible.
The Town Hall and this episode of the Town Hall Spark Sessions were made on the lands of the Lenape people.
If you'd like to learn more about the SparkFile creativity coaching and how we can support you as you clarify and accomplish your creative goals, visit thesparkfile.com, and you can follow us on socials at thesparkfile.
To learn more about the Town Hall and their exciting upcoming events, go to thetownhall.org. Follow them at Town Hall NYC and visit them at 123 West 43rd Street in the heart of New York City. It's all happening at the Town Hall.
And if something you heard inspired you to use your creativity for the powers of good, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take that spark and fan it into a flame.
We're going to wrap it up with the Town Hall Ensemble. Take it away.
Hi, this is Carrie Butler. Welcome to Breaking Broadway, an insider's guide to making it on Broadway. I get to meet a lot of aspiring performers at the stage door and through social media, and their biggest question is, how do I make it on Broadway? Well, lean in. I am going to give you the answer. There is no one answer. Everyone's journey is different. It's not something I can answer in one DM, and that is why I started this podcast. I'm going to give you tips from all different kinds of professionals, insider tips to help you find your way. So put on your dance belts, people. Here we go.